Okay, here we go. So today we've got this 2005 Arctic Cat 500, and this is Maggie's ATV. And what it was doing was, when she was riding it, it slowly lost power, she said, and then it actually backfired a few times and died. And now it will start, but you can't give it any gas at all, or it'll immediately shut off. So I think the carburetor's clogged up. We're going to take the carburetor off and do a thorough cleaning on it and put it back and see if we can fix the problem. Thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoy the video. If you do, drop a like. We love your comments, and we hope you'll subscribe to see more. So here is the carburetor, and we're going to start by taking this plastic cover off, which has a screw at the top of it. So with our Phillips screwdriver, the screw is at the very top of this little plastic cover in the center. So with the screw removed, this cover pops right off. Which will allow us to take the cable, throttle cable, off. So you can see when you hit the throttle, it moves a little cam. And what we're going to do is push that up, which will allow me to move this cable out. And I might need to needle those pliers to do this. So we've got the cable out. Now all we have to do is loosen the clamp screws, which one's at the top, one's at the bottom, and we can rotate this carburetor and twist it out of its mounts. So I'm going to loosen the screw for the front clamp, and it's a straight screwdriver. These do not have to be super tight, but you don't want to get an air leak, so you do want to snug them down pretty good. Okay, and then the second screw is at the top on the back clamp. Hopefully you guys can see some of that. I'm kind of going off feel. Okay, and technically this would come out either side, but because the muffler is on the far side, you can see that the carburetor is loose. And so now I'll just twist it out of there. Okay, so now that we've got the clamps loose, we're just going to twist this carburetor out of the boot. So there is a nut that holds our cable in. We've got our cable loose, but we have to loosen it there. It looks like a 10mm nut. So we'll do that. With the bolt loosened, you can remove the throttle cable. Wish there was more light down there. Okay, got a hose here. And I believe an overflow hose here. this little thing. Okay, so we got this off. I bet there's going to be another screw. Like that. So here's the electronic choke. It's held in with one screw there. So make sure we don't mess that up. But now our carburetor is out. Oops. The carburetor is now out. Use my other hand. Okay, so we've got our carburetor out. Our electric choke screwed in right there, so one Phillips screw there with that probe that goes in there. So now we can clean this carburetor. Okay, this electronic choke, I'd rather mess with it while the carburetor's out of the machine instead of having to bolt that back in while it's in there. So I followed this wire back, and where is it? I found it's this wire here. And so this is the plug for it. Whoop, you can see that. So here's the plug for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fish this wire out of there, and then after I've cleaned the carburetor, I'm going to put the electronic choke back on the carburetor before I mount, goes right here, before I mount this carburetor back on the machine. Okay, so now that I've got the electronic choke removed, I'll be able to put it into the carburetor after I've cleaned the carburetor and then put it back in with it already in place, because it looks like it'd be fairly easy to maybe mess this up trying to install it after the carburetor's already in the machine. It's just so tight inside there. Okay, I've got the electronic choke back in, and I've got the bolt hole lined up. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this back together. Okay, and going into aluminum with a brass screw, just snug it down. Okay, so now our electronic choke is back in place, and all I have to do when I put the carburetor back on is plug it back in with that connector. Now that the carburetor is out of the machine, I went ahead and put the choke back in the carburetor. We're going to take the bowl off. And when you do this, push in about as tightly as you can, as well as turn, because what you don't want to do is strip these screws off. If you do, damage them a little bit, but you can still get them out. They sell Allen head bolts for these carb screws that are a little higher quality. But these all came out very easily, so pretty happy with that. I think I've got all of the gasoline out of this carburetor now, but if you haven't, or if I haven't, you may get some gas out when you take this bowl off, or for sure as you're turning the carb around. Okay, so I'll take all these screws out. I'm going to place them in the cover for the throttle cable. Okay, then we'll pull the bowl off. And that bowl actually looks pretty clean inside there. There's some crud right there in the main jet. Now then, we've got our 3 jets. Pilot jet, main jet, and they call this a secondary jet. I've heard it called the idle jet too, or mid-range jet. But we'll take those out and make sure they're clean, and that should get this ATV back on the trail. I'm gonna need a slightly smaller screwdriver. Okay, so what you want is a small straight blade screwdriver. You want a fairly quality one. I'm using these Icons from Harbor Freight, and I don't say that Harbor Freight is equal with Snap-on or anything like that crazy, but I'm pretty happy with this set of screwdrivers. So again, gentle pressure. Take these screws out. And we'll see if we can see through it. And that one I can see through. Put that in the same carburetor clamp. I think it's this one right here that's probably, oops, used the correct screwdriver, clogged up. And I cannot see through that jet at all. So it is totally clogged up. We're going to take our main jet out as well, since we're doing all of them. Might as well clean all of them. And the jet holders come out with this, and that's fine. I'm not even going to take it apart. See if I can see through there. And it doesn't look too bad. Okay, so we'll clean all of these with carburetor cleaner and air, and then on that one pilot jet that was totally clogged up, I'll run a little wire through there. That jet is solid. There is no hole in it at all. Which is what I thought when it started having that symptom of running too lean, basically. So, kind of screwing this wire through there. That is completely solid. And obviously you wouldn't want to use a drill bit or something that was fatter than what this hole's supposed to be and mess up your jetting. I think I finally got it to go through. I'd like to say 100% certain that this is the problem with this ATV, the way it was running, but you can never be 100% certain of anything, really. So let's say 90% certain that this will fix the problem. And now a little bit of carb cleaner did go through there. Wipe that off. You should wear gloves when you're working on with gas or oils and carb cleaners, for sure. But make sure you don't just have latex ones that will dissolve with that stuff, because I've done that before. Okay, so I've got the ultrasonic cleaner, and you never want to put solvent in an ultrasonic cleaner. Always just use water. But inside this little container, I've got carb cleaner, and I've got the jet, and I've got a nut to make it less buoyant. And I'll set that right in the container. and we'll run a cycle. Okay, so on the ultrasonic cleaner, I'm going to do it for 180 seconds. I'm going to leave the heat off and run that through and see how it does. Kind of hear it going, and I'm starting to see some little bubbles in the container. Okay, so I ran this through the ultrasonic cleaner for I think 3 cycles total, and now I can see through it, and we can run this. It'll focus. It'll run this wire through there. So I'm going to go ahead and put this all back together and see if it'll run. The other thing that I'll do is dump about a half a can of seafoam cleaner in that to run any of that gas that may be bad through, and hopefully clean the rest of the carb without taking it totally apart. So this is the main jet, and when I first took that bowl off, it had what looked like, I don't know, a wad of hair or hay or something coming out the end of it. So cleaned that out, but you can see through there. There you go. You can see through that one. It's not blocked, but I did run the wire through the main and the secondary main also. So now that all of our jets are cleared off, I'm going to put this back together and we'll see how it does. Okay, I've got the rest of the carburetor sprayed out with a little carb cleaner. Make sure all the passages are open. Start by putting the main jet back in. And again, when you put these in, just snug them down. You don't have to go crazy. You definitely don't want to strip the little brass heads off any of these. And then the one that was causing us our problems, little pilot jet. Okay, and on the main jet, since I took the holder out with the jet, I'm going to take an 8mm wrench and just make sure that's the holder snug in. I didn't want to really torque on that little brass slot in the actual jet. Do that. So now we'll put our cover back on, and like I said, I was really amazed that, I mean, there's really no dirt in this. So that looks pretty good, and the O-ring is good. And here's the divot that lines up with that. So this goes this way. Our 4 screws back in. Now that we've got them snugged, a little pressure, remember to push down as well as turn, so you don't strip out the heads of these little Phillips screws. And we're ready to put the carb back on. I am glad I went ahead and put the choke back on. The electric choke. It's going to make it a lot easier to put this on and not have to mess with this while it's in the tighter confines. Okay, and I cut 3 zip ties off the wire for the electric choke when I took that off, so I've got 3 zip ties. Got our carburetor, and I'm going to work that back in to the hole. Okay, there's our throttle cable. Here's that vent, and the fuel line is here. So let's see. I don't know what easier way to do this. Okay. We'll start by putting the vent on. Let's see if I can put the fuel line on now without causing a bunch of leaking. Yeah, a little bit of leaking. Okay. Fuel line's on. We'll put the clamp on it. With our needle nose. Okay, fuel line clamp is on. Now the trick with these boots, carburetor boots, is you don't want to bend the boot and fold it under inside there. And this isn't the easiest thing to see. There we go. Okay, I'm holding the camera with one hand. So the back carburetor boot, you can see it back here, I can grab it here and lift it out of the way. So now, if you can see right there, it'll focus. Okay, that front carburetor boot that goes into the head is almost lined up. And now it is in there. So I just need to tighten the clamp, which is having a hard time focusing on. Right there is the screw for it. Okay, so now I've got this clamp with a screw. I'm going to put it on the bottom. I think I can get to that easier in the top. And then there is the screw for the front. The main thing is these boots are both fully on the carburetor. So we don't have the boot folded over, which I've seen so many times, especially on older snowmobiles. It seemed like those carbs were always halfway installed in those boots. Of course, the boots would rip, and so it didn't really matter, I guess, there either. But all right, let's tighten it down. Okay, so now I've got both of the clamps for the boots tightened up, if you can see that. But our carburetor is in. You want it straight up and down, and it is, and it's tightened up. So I've got to put on my throttle cable, and I've got the choke wire for the electric choke to plug back in and to re-zip tie it up. And what you want to do is make sure you keep it away from anything that makes excessive heat. So most of that is on the far side with the muffler, but you want to keep it away from this head too, because it gets a little warm. All right, let's see if I can get you on a tripod where we can see the whole thing. The trick I've always found to these, you can see that, is when I loosen this, I took this nut loose, and if I never turn that one, it should be the same adjustment. So I'll run this down with my fingers as far as I can go. Take just a half turn, snug it up. There we go. Okay, so that's snugged up, and it should be the same adjustment that it was. Now I just have to put the cable in its slot. The easiest way to do that is to bend it up here. Okay, so I got it in there. Turn the camera off for a second, and it works. So now I'll put the cover back on that, and the last thing that I have to do is plug in the electric choke. So we'll put the cover on the throttle cable, and it goes in at this tab first into this square piece, and then just walks up. I don't know if you'll be able to see the screw or not. Takes a Phillips screwdriver, and again, this is just a screw holding a plastic cover on, so don't kill it or strip it out. There we go. Okay, so we'll plug in our electric choke. Let's see if I can zoom out just a bit and get that. Okay, so here is our male plug-in for our electric choke. There's the female. So that's plugged in. Now we just have to zip tie these wires up out of the way. Okay, the only thing left to do is see if it'll start. And because we took all of the fuel out of the carburetor, it may take a second to pump through. It's back. Cool. Well, when I had solid pilot jet, I knew that was a problem. Okay, so I'll put the rest of the stuff on it. We'll go out and test ride it. And I already put a half can of seafoam in the gas tank, so we should be good. Okay, that's our Arctic Cat 500 carburetor cleaning video. This was the 2005 Arctic Cat 500 with the electronic choke carburetor. And hope you liked it. If you did, drop a like. And we love your comments, and we'd love to have you subscribe. Have a great day, be safe.